What has happened in YouTube? This is Hayes Anderson. We're on our final installment of this series. We are now going to install all the synthesizers and drum machines that will be riding off of MIDI output A. Right now I have a lot of them powered up. We have the big Eurorack system going. We have the subharmonicon and DFAM and the two Nifty cases, as well as the Neutron, the 2XM, the Proton, and the Syncussion SY. So as it stands, the Syncussion is going to the patch bay into a track, as is the DFAM, as well as the subharmonicon. And I have the Eurorack going as well with the crazy patch. As well as two of the Nifty cases. You get the point. What I need to do next is get the rest of the semi-modulars powered up and installed, but before I do that, I really need to discuss MIDI for this section. So I'm going to be utilizing a lot of the through ports, and I haven't really decided how I'm going to do that yet. It's kind of tight in there, so it's going to be difficult to get those MIDI cords, those MIDI cables right where I need them to be and be out of the way. I've done this in the past, but we'll see if I can do it again. But apart from that, the next decision is what to do MIDI-wise with the SY1, the 2XM, the Proton, and the Neutron. I'm definitely going to need to get some MIDI to the Neutron, but I'm thinking about maybe not having MIDI going to the 2XM, the Proton, and the SY, and just having those right off of the Eurorack and other semi-modulars. Well, it would just be the Eurorack. That's going to be too far of a stretch to get to these guys over here. Let's go ahead and take a look around the backside. Yeah, it's a bit of a mess down here, but not too terrible. This section over here, minus audio and MIDI being hooked up to these three, is not going to be so bad. Everything underneath is already taken care of. The illuminator is ready to go. What I do not have are the two MIDI hubs powered up and ready to go. What I have, however, is a whole section of power strips ready to power up all of these synthesizers. I did a count earlier. I can't remember exactly what it is, but there are plenty of outlets left to power up all the synthesizers, and there will be a couple left over in the meantime. So the backside is manageable. It's not going to be very pretty. If we take a look under at the backside of the patch bay down here, that's definitely not very awesome. So, but for the most part, it is manageable. I'm hoping not to have to get back here too often to fix things. It will be inevitably a chore though. And taking a look back over here at the B side of things where the boutiques are powered up and the other drum machines and so forth. Again, not so bad. I'll keep an eye out on things to make sure that nothing catches on fire. But let's go ahead and move on to hooking up these synthesizers now. Several days have now passed. We're about 95% there. Let's talk about it. So right now we have the B4000 Plus ready to go. The Lyra 8 is ready to go. I'm using a TRS cable to get to the patch bay. I want to use that cable for the B4000 instead and use this adapter to get stereo because I don't need to use the TRS for this one. It's mono only. And then I'll get another cable for it. And I was discussing how I'm going to handle the input since I don't have room on the patch bay. And the solution to that is I'm going to use this corded headphone extender and just have it wrap around the desk and get over here to right underneath the MicroFreak, and that'll be like right next to the patch bay. So anything that I want to patch into the Lyra 8, I'll be able to do it that way. Moving on, the Poly-In tracker is ready to go. We have a really cool granular patch set up for it. And that is actually someone's voice.
Well, my opinion about expert is that it's something far too overestimated. It's a métier which shouldn't even exist.
The MicroFreak is ready to go, and since it is only being accessed through USB MIDI, it's great. I just have an output and the power cord that is also doubling as a class compliant MIDI. I can now control anything that is armed on the Squirt Pyramid. So it's a double bass. We'll get to that later. The boutiques and all of these synthesizers are ready to go. What was left were the semi-modulars, and they were powered up with all their MIDI channels set, ready to go. Let's talk about them. So this is all coming out of MIDI output A on the Squirt Pyramid. On channel 1 is the Toro. On channel 2 is the Cat. I need to work on that patch. It's got a hairball stuck in it. On channel 3 is the Model D. And then on 4 is the Wasp. On 5 is the K2. On 6 is the Cobalt. Brand new synthesizer to me. I don't know how to use it yet. On 7 is the Pro 1. And then on 8 is the Delta Sep A. And that of course has its own effects built in. On 9 is the Crave. And I won't be using the keypad too much for that one. Right now I'm using the MIDI through to get to the Toro, and then that's coming over to the Delta Sep A. So I can talk about that really quickly. If you notice, I'm utilizing as many of these throughs as I can without overdoing it. I will stack up to 3 synthesizers on a so-called through chain. I won't go any further than that. And this seems to work just fine for me. So that covers all the semi-modulars over here. There is another synthesizer that I want to talk about. Well, let's talk about this really quickly. So the Neutron is set up on channel 13 coming out of MIDI output A. The 2XM does not have MIDI hooked up into it yet, nor does the Proton or the SY1. Respectively, the channels I have set, starting with the Neutron, 13, 14, 15, and the SY1 is on the infamous channel 10. And if I do use it, it will probably try to piggyback off of the RS9, and I will only use MIDI in on the RS9 for its clock signal. But again, all of these are sounding ready to go. I just need to work on the levels, of course. But let's talk about the Neutron since we're over here. I just powered it up, recycled the power, and if I hit the bias, wow. There's like really something broken about that. I'm going to keep the bias going. And just really quick, I have not updated the firmware on this yet. So if I switch over here to track 13, as soon as I hit it with the MIDI note, it tracks. The keyboard tracks fine. Of course, it's not in tune. We'll turn that down, and now I'll actually be able to play it accordingly. But if I did not do that, if I tried to access it with CV gate only, the keyboard tracking would be off. Again, I just need to do the firmware update. It's still using the original firmware on it, so that's on me. But that is a trick that I learned. So while I'm looking at this, I had a couple problems. I was using a TS cable to get to the oscilloscope, and the oscilloscope is getting its signal from the patch bay, which has normalized to it the monitoring output. So all the monitoring output is available for other headphones if I need to hook it into this passive monitor down below, as well as this oscilloscope, so we can see my voice kind of going through it now. If I want a conga pattern, we can use a conga pattern. The problem is that I was using a TS cable instead of TRS, and it was completely taking away the left channel, which it is prone to do when that happens. So I fixed that one. Another issue was one of these Mini Chaos pads was getting a lot of noise, so I used another noise suppressor on it. I'm still getting noise out of this Deco Strymon, so if I can get that handled, then I will probably have eliminated all digital noise, and that's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing to have. So the other issue that I'm dealing with is the VidPix, for whatever reason, is not working, but that happens sometimes. I'll just start over and troubleshoot and see what's going on with that. But as it stands, I am ready to start streaming. It's just a matter of start streaming, start getting some music going, some tracks going, and just see what happens. Again, I'm staying out of the way of January, but the other thing I have on my plate is to get my first January album on Bandcamp. And I'm planning on doing maybe 2, 3, 4 of those over time. But for this one, this will be the volume number 1 of January's, and yeah, we're going to be working on that. That covers it for this portion. I will do another final portion, just kind of wrapping everything up, but for now, things are looking great. We do have a few technical difficulties every once in a while. One more technical difficulty I notice is that this particular cable will give me grief sometimes, and I will lose the left signal, which is not just the monitoring signal, it is the actual recorded signal. So I'll have to be on the lookout for that. I might want to switch that cable out if it keeps giving me trouble. And I almost forgot to do our current check. Where are we now with everything plugged up and powered on? We're looking at right about 5 amps. That's beautiful. That's not too much at all. We can totally manage that. These are now labeled and ready to go. I have an empty track here and an empty stereo track here that I might use for one effects return on one of these two mixers, probably the drum machine mixer. And over on the big mixer, everything is labeled, as well as the side mixer over here, as well as the zoom effects that I use for those two mixers. I know that this one goes to the small one below it, and these two go to the big mixer. This is aux 1, this is aux 2. And while I'm at it, let's just say, for example, that I wanted to take the 2XM and I did not want to use this mixer in those two tracks. I can use the patch bay to redirect the output of the 2XM to, say, two of the tracks over here. Maybe I'm not going to use the 2600 and the Pico. I can use these two tracks instead for the 2XM, pan them hard left and hard right if I wanted to, and I would have all of the effects that are available on this mixer available for the 2XM. Live jamming should be a little easier to manage now with all of these tracks labeled. What I will not be doing, however, is putting labels on the patch bay. And the reason is because I'm pretty much only going to be interfacing with those 6 patch points. And if I ever need to, say, to redirect one or two of the synthesizers from one mixer to another mixer, I can just use the mixer itself as a reference, as well as the spreadsheet that I have. Now that the MIDI routing has been established, another chore on my plate is to switch up how the string section is interfacing with the Squirt Pyramid. Currently, it is piggybacking off of MIDI output B, but instead I want it to piggyback off of the USB output. And to do that, I will be using this RetroKit's RK006 MIDI hub. So I will need to hook all of that up. And while I'm doing that, I think I also want to push these synthesizers back towards the wall just a little bit to free up some more room in front of it. We are very nearly approaching completion as we got the VidPix to work. We also got the B4000 MIDI and audio set up. The Lyra 8 is set up, input and output. We should be getting MIDI to the Poly-In tracker now. I had to use a TRS-B cable for it. It, as well as the MicroFreak, use TRS-B, but at least the MicroFreak has USB compliant MIDI. The Poly-In tracker might as well. I can look into that, but something tells me that it's going to need more than 5 volts to get that sucker going. What else do we need to do? We need to work on the lights for the illuminator. That is one thing. I was able to get the string station a little more cleaned up. What I have here is a little better. The Selena is on these two tables now. Because the legs are a little spread wider on the keyboard stand, I was unable to ride it on top of the VC340, but to be honest, that previous setup was a bit sketchy. This one's still sketchy too. As you can see, I'm having to use a whole bunch of zip ties to keep the keyboard stand sort of in place from falling over. That's a pretty expensive synthesizer to fall over, but I think it's going to be okay. I still need to get the master effects, so to speak, set up. The reason why I haven't completed this portion yet is because I have a lot of cables that I'm using for this that need to be repaired. And they mostly need to be repaired because they're the 90-degree angled connector jacks. And some of them are like the Mogami, no, not Mogami, some other, whatever they are. And they are, for whatever reason, just kind of difficult to work with, and it's very easy to get them to short out. So I have several of those, about 8 or so I need to go through and fix up. But as you can see here, I have another RK006 ready to go. It has one MIDI in, which is coming from the other RK006 behind the table behind me, and that is configured to the USB from the Pyramid. So this is essentially receiving MIDI from the USB out of the Pyramid. It's not able, however, to send MIDI in to the Pyramid via USB. That's okay. I don't need for it to do that. And on the side, there is one MIDI out. Currently, it has 5 on that side. The other side is configured for CV. I would like to have that reversed. I'll work on that later, maybe. The CV would be nice for pocket operators. They don't need MIDI. But that MIDI cable that is currently extended out of the RK006 is going to the UBX AD at the top, and then it has a MIDI cable coming out of its through going down to the Selena, and then the Selena has another through going to the vocoder VC16, which I have not discussed much about. And I did a test with the microphone. I was not able to get a very clear signal. I needed to get some kind of amplification going for that. I even went through my voice tone create. I thought that would be enough, but it kind of wasn't. I'll do some more work on it. I did another test with the Pocket Operator PO12 drum machine, and it sounded fine. So I was able to send MIDI to it via the VC340. And I would like to do a separate video on my MIDI workflow and just my workflow in general. So I won't get into that much more. But one final thing is that I also was able to secure this small mixer that is used to mix the stereo signals of the rotary pedal and the Dreadbox Hypnosis. This mixer is now secured against the side, so this gives me room for a micro jam mixer. So I have a couple, 3 other mixers on the side over here that I need to kind of check out, test, and see which one is the best and which ones need to be repaired. Some of the preamps are not working on some of them. And one other item I'm contemplating is using this MIDI switcher potentially to allow me to hook up any other MIDI controller into this particular setup so that I can get MIDI into the Squirt Pyramid from any other controller in my setup. Currently, I can do that provided that it uses USB compliant MIDI, and I can just plug the USB-C into this port. Since everything is now powered on, all the cameras, the A10 Mini Pro video switcher, the VidPix is getting signal to the TV set, all that stuff, let's do another possibly final current check. Eventually, I think I'm just going to remove this doohickey and have the power cable come directly out of the power strip, because this is not exactly the safest thing in the world to deal with, but it is very handy to make sure that we're not going over what the fuse box wants. And we can see here we're looking at 5.15 or so, 5.2. We'll say 5.5 to be safe. And I think that that is well under what we expected it to be. I was guessing it was going to be around 8 even. So we're under 6. And I think this is going to be fine. I'm not really planning on hooking up too much more stuff. As I said before, I would like to get another effect to the each one of the 12R mixers on the rack if possible. They definitely have the room for it. And also have 2 stereo tracks available for them that I think will be pretty good. I think I'm going to do another quick test though for the audio for you. We can listen to the noise levels. We can hear if there's any phase issues with the zoom pedals when I don't have any effects turned on. Just things like that. But in the meantime, I'm going to call this 99% complete. It is now time to conclude the studio tour. Everything has been set up with the exception of all the lights. We have some of the lights set up as you can see, but we'll get to those later. Let's go ahead and go down the list. I am having mostly most of the noise issues are taken care of. I have some noise issues coming out of the zoom pedals. That's to be expected. The B4000 Plus, I'm not able to get it loud enough without it kind of distorting. Maybe I can play that for you. Sounds very nice, but if I try to turn it up to match the other levels, can hear that digital clipping, which is never fun. I'll figure that out later, and let's see. But everything else seems to be going pretty well. Lyra 8. It's pretty mad at me right now. We got the Strymon Deco to be a little more quiet. I was able to isolate its power supply, and that definitely got rid of like a digital ground loop. It still is pretty noisy, but that's just because of the distortion that it has built in with it. So what I have here is I'm able to plug the headphone out of the rack mixer, and we can listen to what the effects sound like actually. Yeah, that's not very awesome. What I might do is I'm going to maybe show you a picture of the spectral diagram of that real quick. But the reason why you're not really hearing that is because that mixer goes through a gate. It goes through a noise gate. I have a sort of like in effect a stereo noise gate. But for the most part, that definitely took care of a lot of the noise for the Strymon Deco. So I'm pretty happy with that. See, as you can tell, you don't really hear it. I can give a demonstration. We can try the K oscillator. See, you don't really notice it. Isn't that wild? And this begs the question, who are the noisiest synthesizers? Well, the Lyra 8 has some leakage. You might be able to hear that. And if I turn the drive up, you definitely can hear it. So the Lyra 8 can definitely get very noisy. Let's turn that back down. Some other noise. I get some leakage from the various Euro racks, and I can deal with that. As you can see, nothing's plugged in right now, but if I plug in the Wasp, you can barely hear that. And right now what you're mostly hearing is the modulation from the Selena. The phaser is not too noisy, but the modulation, definitely. We'll go and turn that off in the meantime. Who else is being very noisy? I think we got some noise coming out of here. No, it was when I plugged in that. Oh yeah, it was both of them. So as you can see, it's a little bit of noise here, a little bit of noise there. It might help for me to put some noise gates on those things that accumulate that noise. Now let's do one final thing. I promised that I would do this. Let's crank the noise up. Well, not the noise, but let's crank up each of the mixers to hear how noisy they are. So here is the microstation. And let's back up. Let's go ahead and turn that modulation, which is a chorus effect, on the Selena. Now you can really hear it. So I'll try to show a picture of the spectral frequency imaging of this. This is the rack, what I call the rack, which is where all the effects mix into. And it's quiet right now. Why? Because it has a noise gate on it. But all we have to do is come back over here, and that's what that sounds like. Really not awesome. I may do some more work to try to correct that. Ooh, this was already cranked up this whole time. Look at that. So the top at least is not too noisy, and the bottom is not too noisy either. Have to be careful with main because this is where my microphone is going into. Not too bad. And this is what I call sub 1, which is this little Xenix mixer right there. And we do have some, and that's the AY3, I think. Yeah, the AY3's got some noise still. And I have a filter going on already, but it's a really tricky synth to get to work and play nice with the other kids. So as you can see, the lights are going now, and this is coming from the Soma Laboratories Illuminator, which is hidden behind the big Eurorack case. And right now I'm just using a couple of LFOs to control them. So like for these, we can speed it up and slow it down. The microstation is going. I was able to fix those cables with the exception of this one here. I do have this cable that I fixed, and I will substitute it and see if it works. If not, I'll just keep that yellow TRS and not worry about it. But as you can see, we have the trifecta going, and we still have the other effects available. So the string section is in full operation. The microstation is ready to go. I'm able to test new pedals. The Euro rack is all set up and ready to go. Everything is ready to go. The oscilloscope is working just fine. And all that's left to do now is just start making some music with this stuff. But I will say I've been happy to back off this January and let everybody else do their thing. But I'm hoping to be a lot more active starting next week when February starts. And I also want to announce that I have a new album coming out. It's going to be called January's Volume 1. I'll let you guess what that's going to contain, and it should be available January 31st, this Saturday. So thanks for hanging out with me while we set up the studio one more time and make some more music, make some more noise with this crazy, crazy mess. Stay creative, stay happy, stay you. Thanks for watching.